Our final speaker on this panel is Amy Gravino. Ms. Gravino, you're a writer, you're an international speaker, and an autism advocate, and you've really quite bravely written about being bullied yourself as an adult. Can you tell us why do you think you've been a target of bullying in the workplace and other places, and how have you overcome those experiences?
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. This has been a journey. I spoke here 7 years ago with Saima on a panel, so I feel very privileged and blessed to be here. When I received this question, I knew my answer almost immediately, and it was kind of a sad thing to think about because I was bullied all through school, through elementary, middle, and high school, and I understood it. I didn't like it. It hurt. It was very painful, but I understood it. People didn't like me, so they bullied me. When I became an adult, I encountered a new kind of bullying, which was from people who I loved and who I thought loved me, but actually didn't. I moved across the country after graduating from college and became involved with someone, a guy, which is probably not the best adjective, so I'll go with invertebrate, because that's closer to what he was. I wound up losing my virginity to him, and about 6 months later learned that he had had a girlfriend he forgot to tell me about and was sleeping with half the women in the city. And while these other girls would be calling up his girlfriend saying how great he was in bed and so on and so forth, I was the target. His girlfriend would call me, harass me, threaten to kill me if I didn't leave town, say all of these terrible things. And I knew somewhere inside of me that I've always had kind of the word target on my forehead. I love too much. I love very deeply. And I think that's part of being autistic, a part I'm grateful for, but a part that also gets me in trouble because I can't shut it off necessarily. At one point, he sent me an email that essentially said, "Your first time was the grossest thing I ever did. You were just a retarded whore," word I won't say. And I feel that language was very specifically used. I think that if I had not been autistic, I would not have been as much of a target as I became, because I fell in love with him. I was open and honest, and it really hurt to feel that my judgment had been so misguided that, I had thought that this guy felt for me what I did for him. And everyone, my parents, my friends 3,000 miles away, all knew something was not right. And I, of course, thought, no, how can they know? They're across the country. I'm here. They don't really know him. They were absolutely right. But I had to learn the hard way. And I again, as I say, I was the target. I was vulnerable. I was inexperienced. I had only had one boyfriend prior to this, and I, didn't know a lot about relationships, obviously, and I was just innately vulnerable. I think that I trusted him, obviously, very readily, and I was willing to do anything to make him happy. I think a lot of autistic people, especially autistic women, we find ourselves subverting our own needs and desires to please others. That's how we're socialized in society quite a lot, and especially in this instance at this time in my life where I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. I wasn't the person that I am now, and so I was looking for validation from him. I was looking for love. I guess the word desperate could be used, but really now when I look back, I'd rather apply the word desperate to him as someone who'd be willing to take someone's virginity under false pretenses and do what he did and kind of leave the memory of that night forever tainted for me. But the fact that all of this bile was thrown my way, that I just took it, I never really fought back. I kept picking up the phone every time it rang because I was hoping it was him saying he was choosing me over her. Again, I was in love, I was stupid. The way, there are two, types of moving on I came to learn. Because the first type of moving on, because when all this happened, I found this all out on the phone or online. He never confronted me face to face. See, invertebrate. And so we never had a face-to-face conversation. So I kind of had to move on because he was ripped out of my life. But it took a good 7 or 8 years before I was able to fully move on, and which happened when I developed feelings for someone new, which I didn't think I'd be able to. But then it ended up not working out with that person, but I was still okay. And I thought, well, even if I ever have feelings for someone, if it doesn't work out, I won't be able to survive that. But I did. And there's no magic solution. There's no one thing that, can heal a broken heart, except that I found a strength inside of me that I think a lot of autistic women have in us, that people underestimate, people don't realize we have, that enables us to put up with so much stuff from other people, from neurotypicals, from autistic men, I'm sorry to say. It comes from all directions. And that strength came out when I was tested and faced with this horrible situation. So that was, a clear instance of becoming a target, how it altered my life in some terrible ways and in some actually very positive ways. And he had the nerve to message me a few months later and say, "I'm sorry I ruined your life." And I just got angry for the first time in all of this. And I thought, how dare you give yourself that much credit? You haven't ruined my life. I'm still here. And I'm still here. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Given this general situation, what most needs to be done to empower girls and women?
I'm a member of several organizations that are specifically geared toward girls and women. Yes, She Can, which does job training, and Felicity House, which is here in the city for women on the spectrum, which is represented here today. And a lot of times when I mention these to people, they say, well, what about boys? And I was like, everything else is for boys. Yes, it is. And it's an amazing thing that as soon as you mention something like this that is created just for us, other people wonder why it has to be. It's sort of like when people say, well, why isn't there a straight pride parade? Well, you don't need one. And it's this, when we create spaces for us, let those be our spaces. We need these environments to help foster connections among girls and women, to help raise our voices. I think, we need to listen to those voices as well, that we're not necessarily segregating ourselves, but we're trying to find a place to be safe, because it can be hard to feel safe even in autistic spaces. I've left groups because I was getting hit on by guys or getting ignored or harassed, and it's very difficult. So I would say let our spaces be our spaces. Give us more spaces. Give us not just a seat at the table, but a chance to speak up and be heard. I think that's the most important thing, and recognize that what might seem like a fault, having big hearts, is actually a vital asset.